All right, get this French organized crime. We're diving in headfirst today. But put those images of, stereotypical gangsters in berets aside. This isn't some, like, cheesy movie. We're talking Le Milieu, France's own underworld.
You got it. And yeah, while the mafia or those kind of groups might be what comes to mind first for most people, Le Milieu is its own thing. Specifically French, with a whole history, evolution, everything.
It's funny how organized crime, your brain just goes to those familiar places. But le milieu, literally meaning the middle, right?
Yeah.
That's different. Like, it's right there, part of everything.
Exactly. Woven in, you could say. And that's what makes it so interesting to dig into. It's not just gangs off doing their own thing. It's how they've gotten their hooks into power structures, the economy, even just how France has changed over time.
Forget the romanticized stuff. Let's get real. Where'd this all begin?
Well, believe it or not, you can trace it way back, the very start of Le Milieu. It kind of got its start in the mess after the French Revolution. When the monarchy went kaput, that kind of power vacuum, organized crime, it sees that as an opportunity.
So out of all that chaos, these networks, they start to grow. Makes sense. That kind of environment, you got to be resourceful.
Absolutely. You fast forward a bit, early 1900s, you've got Corsican gangs moving to mainland France. Marseille, perfect spot for smuggling. That's where guys like Paul Carbone, Francois Spirito, they really made their names.
Carbone and Spirito, those are the guys behind, what was it, big prostitution rings back in the day.
Oh.
And they were super involved in the French Connection later on, right?
That's them. And the French Connection, that wasn't just a catchy movie title. It was huge international heroin smuggling, 1930s all the way to the 70s. Shows you how Le Milieu, their reach, it wasn't just some small-time thing. They were on the world stage.
But that's wild. So we're not talking about pickpockets here. This is serious stuff impacting the whole world. And it's happening during such a crazy time for France, 2 world wars, the economy changing, governments in turmoil.
And that's not by accident. Le Milieu didn't just exist during those times. It used them, adapted, saw the changes, and used them to their advantage. Whenever there's instability, upheaval, well, that's their time to shine.
Like a living thing, yeah. Evolving to stay alive, thriving even when things are falling apart around them.
Perfect way to put it. But to really get it, just listing off events, it's not enough, Got to look deeper, how they're structured, who's in charge, what holds it all together.
So let's break it down. This whole structure. We've said words like side, basically. Mr. Big Shot and Beau Voyou, like their version of Goodfellas, yeah?
Yeah.
But there's got to be more to it.
With this stuff, there's always more, right? Yeah. But you're right. Those terms, they're a glimpse into how Le Milieu works. It ain't just about being tough. It's respect, a whole code they live by.
And to keep that power, got to divide and conquer, right? I read about mouvances, like their territories. But how'd that work out practically? Were they always fighting over turf?
You're spot on to think about it like that. Those mouvances, who controlled them, that could change constantly. New alliances, betrayals, violence, all that fun stuff. And the groups fighting, they were all different, just like the areas they wanted.
Speaking of different groups, we found some interesting examples. The Bono Gang, early 1900s, sounds like something out of a comic book almost.
Oh yeah, they were ahead of their time. Used that newfangled Citroën traction Avant car as their getaway vehicle, showed how bold they were, but also that they were using the latest tech. The Bono Gang, they captured the public's attention, but they also were kind of a sign of things to come for Le Milieu, bolder and bolder tactics.
Like they set the bar, upped the ante for organized crime. But they weren't the only ones making headlines. What about the Zemmour family? That's like straight out to The Godfather, becoming the Godfathers of Paris.
Ugh, the Zemmour brothers. Now, their story is a wild one, not just because they climbed to the top, but also they were Jewish Pied Noir French citizens who'd come back from Algeria after it got independence. Shows you that Le Milieu isn't just one type of person. It pulled from everywhere in French society.
Really drives home the point that Le Milieu wasn't and still isn't some outside force. It's a reflection of France itself. And it wasn't just individual families or gangs, right? There were groups like the Union Corse, not one specific gang, but this whole network of Corsican gangsters, especially during the whole French Connection thing.
The Union Corse, that's a perfect example of how shadowy Le Milieu could be. Wasn't some official club with membership cards, more like people connected by trust, shared history, and of course wanting to get rich off that sweet heroin money. And their power, it went way beyond Corsica, even into the government, which just shows you how far organized crime can reach.
Like puppet masters, behind the curtain, making things happen without getting their hands dirty. And then there's the Gang de la Brise de Mer. the Seabreeze gang, right? Still causing trouble over in Corsica.
The Seabreeze Gang, they're a great example of how these groups, they get ingrained in their communities. They'll run legitimate businesses right alongside their criminal stuff. Makes it way harder to tell who's who and who's doing what.
So it's a constant back and forth, isn't it? Law enforcement trying to catch up while these guys are always one step ahead.
You got it. And that struggle, it gets even more complicated when you think about the human cost of it all. You know what I mean?
It's easy to get caught up in the stories, the names, and all that, but we got to remember, this is real life, you know? People getting hurt, lives ruined.
No doubt. You look at those gang wars in Corsica back in 2008, over 100 people gone. Just brutal fighting to control things. It's a harsh reminder, this Le Milieu stuff, it's not just headlines, it has real consequences.
And it's not just, like, the violence, is it? The economic side of it, nobody trusting each other, the whole community kind of gets dragged down by it even generations later.
That's the thing, the ripple effect. When Le Milieu makes money, usually it's the people who can least afford it that pay the price. Stuck in that cycle of, poverty being taken advantage of.
It's kind of depressing when you think about it like that. Makes you realize we can't just ignore this stuff. Got to face it head on, figure out how to dismantle these guys.
And that means got to change with the times, because Le Milieu, they're like any successful business, they adapt.
Exactly. We got to talk about how they've kept up, especially in the 21st century. Globalization, the internet, all that. It's not just like suitcases full of heroin anymore.
Nah, those old school things are still around.
Yeah.
But Le Milieu, they've branched out. This globalized digital world, they're using it.
So give it to us straight. What are they up to now? What's this high-tech crime look like?
Think white-collar stuff. Money laundering, those super complicated schemes, cybercrime, fake goods, all that. Way harder to track, less risky, and the money. Forget about it.
Traded in their Tommy guns for computers, huh? But the stakes are even higher now. I think I read somewhere they estimated French organized crime something like $23 billion back in 2016. Just their income.
And that number's only gone up, you can bet on that. Shows you how profitable this new stuff is. But it ain't just about the cash, it's the power that comes with it.
Because that's what it's really about, right? Power. And when there's power up for grabs, somebody's going to try and take it. So who are the new guys shaking things up these days?
You're seeing a lot of North African gangs, especially around the suburbs of Paris. They don't always play by the old Le Milieu rules, and sometimes they're much more violent.
A new generation, new methods. It's like a whole new chapter in this Le Milieu story.
And we can't forget about the voyageurs. Some people call them traveler gangs, like the Hornick family. They've done it all. Robberies, extortion, illegal gambling, you name it.
The Hornick family, huh? Like the ultimate family business, except, not exactly selling flowers here.
To put it lightly,
Yeah.
their story, it goes back decades, multiple generations. It shows you how tough it is to deal with organized crime.
Yeah.
You can't just arrest a few people, got to break down these networks that go so deep.
Yeah.
You got to address the stuff that makes people want to join them in the first place.
Yeah.
Like what's going on in society and the economy, all of it.
It's like, I don't know, trying to untangle a spider web that's been there forever, strings going everywhere. You pull on one and who knows what's going to happen.
That's a good way to put it. So it makes it hard for law enforcement. They got to change, adapt to these new tactics.
Yeah.
Can't just do things the old way.
So forget more cops on the street. That's not going to cut it. You got to understand this digital world, how money moves around, the reasons why people turn to crime in the first place.
Exactly. It's a whole different ball game now. Got to use those old tactics, but also be smart about what's going on in the world today.
And maybe even more importantly, we got to change how we think about all this. Organized crime, it's not just some distant threat, It's connected to everything around us, and it's not always just about greed.
That's a really important point. If you want to fight this, got to look deeper. Why is there poverty? Inequality. People feel left out. That's where Le Milieu and all these other groups, that's where they thrive.
So it's not enough to just catch the bad guys. Got to fix the problems that let them exist in the first place.
100%. Got to realize we're all part of this. What we do, what we don't do, it all matters.
We got to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, what kind of world are we building here? Because at the end of the day, it's on all of us. Whether we stop this or let it keep going, makes you think, doesn't it? We're all a part of this, whether we realize it or not. But hey, that's what makes these deep dives so interesting, right? It's not just some far-off thing. It's about us, the world we live in, how it all works.
That's why we got to keep digging, keep asking those questions. The more we know about this stuff, the better chance we have to stop it, right?
So we've gone through a lot, this whole Le Milieu thing. What are the big takeaways? What do you hope people listening will remember?
The main thing, got to get this limo you, it ain't stuck in the past.
Yeah.
It's like constantly changing history, the economy, people's choices. It all plays a role.
Always evolving, right? Just like we were saying before.
Exactly. And like any complex system, got to see the connections. Violence, corruption, the economic side, that's all just the tip of the iceberg. There's always something deeper going on.
So it's not enough to just round up the bad guys, gotta fix the things that make it easy for them to exist.
You got it.
Yeah.
And to do that, got to change how we think about it. Good versus evil, that's too simple. There's more to it, more factors driving organized crime.
The world's not black and white, right? Gotta see those gray areas, how we might even be playing a part without meaning to.
And at the end of the day, it's about what we do. We can ignore it, pretend it's not there, or we educate ourselves, think critically, and expect better from our leaders.
Because this fight against organized crime, it's not just on the cops or whoever, it's on all of us. We gotta be willing to ask the tough questions, challenge what we think we know, and try to build a better world. Well, that was a wild ride. From the streets of France after the revolution, all the way to hackers and global networks. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of hooked now, even if it's a bit unnerving.
It's a lot to take in, that's for sure. But if you're feeling a little uneasy, that's good. Means you're really thinking about it, asking yourself questions.
And that's exactly what the deep dive is all about. Get curious, see things from different angles, maybe end up with more questions by the time we're done.
Sometimes the answers aren't the important part. It's knowing what questions to ask in the first place.
Couldn't have said that better myself. So, for anyone listening, if this got you hooked, don't stop here. Grab a book, watch a documentary, even just that Wikipedia page. You'll be amazed what you find. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Le Milieu. Until next time, keep exploring.